Here are some of the weirdest banking laws in the US. You can't hold a bank robbery ransom in Nevada. If someone robs a bank and takes hostages, it's illegal for the bank to pay a ransom to get them released. This law is meant to deter criminals from attempting such heists, but it also puts banks in a tough spot. Texas banks can refuse to give you change. In Texas, banks are not legally required to provide customers with coins or small bills. If they don't want to break your $100 bill, they can simply refuse. In Oklahoma, you can't trick a bank teller with a fake bomb. It's illegal to enter a bank with a fake bomb or threaten the bank with a hoax explosive device. This law had to be explicitly written, suggesting someone actually tried it before. It's illegal to deposit a wooden nickel in some states. Some states, including North Carolina, have laws against accepting or attempting to deposit a wooden nickel. These were novelty items from the Great Depression, but apparently, someone tried to pass them off as real money. Alabama has a law against putting money in your mouth. In Alabama, it's technically illegal to put money in your mouth. This was meant to prevent the spread of disease, but it's strange to see it actually codified in law. Banks in Kansas can't issue their own currency. While it's obviously illegal nationwide for banks to print their own money, Kansas felt the need to make sure there were no misunderstandings by explicitly banning it in state law. You can't take more than $10 in pennies to a bank in California. If you're hoarding pennies and want to cash them in, California banks can legally refuse deposits of more than $10 worth of pennies. South Dakota once had a law against women owning banks. While no longer in effect, South Dakota used to have a law preventing women from owning or running banks. Thankfully, this outdated law is long gone. Bank tellers in Utah must be standing when handling transactions. There used to be a law in Utah requiring bank tellers to stand while handling customer transactions. No sitting allowed. Florida once had a law limiting ATM fees to $2. This law tried to prevent banks from charging ridiculous ATM fees, but big banks lobbied against it, and it eventually got repealed. You can't wear a mask in a bank, most states. While it makes sense to prevent robberies, this law became awkward during the COVID-19 pandemic when masks were required everywhere. Some states had to temporarily suspend the rule. Louisiana once banned ATM use. After dark, a weird old law in Louisiana made it illegal to use an ATM after 8 p.m. It was meant to prevent crime, but mostly just annoyed people needing cash at night. North Dakota once made it illegal to serve alcohol in banks at one point. North Dakota had a law prohibiting banks from serving alcohol inside their buildings. Apparently, boozy banking was a thing. In Georgia, it's illegal to bounce a check on purpose. If you knowingly write a check without enough money in your account, it's a crime, even if you immediately cover it afterward. Weird banking laws about money itself. It's illegal to destroy or mutilate currency, but people do it all the time. Federal law, 18 U.S.C. paragraph 333, makes it illegal to rip, burn, or deface U.S. currency. But have you seen all those lucky pennies squished into souvenirs at tourist attractions? You can't use foreign coins as legal tender in the U.S. It's technically illegal to try paying with Canadian coins in the U.S., even though cashiers often accept them by mistake. In Illinois, it's illegal to use a fake name on a credit card even. If it's just a nickname or a joke, using a fake name on a credit card application is a criminal offense. You can be arrested for paying with too many coins in certain states. Some states, like Massachusetts, have laws allowing businesses to refuse large amounts of loose change. So, paying for a car in pennies? Not happening. Bizarre banking restrictions. You can't store money in your mattress in some states, technically. While not strictly enforced, some states have old anti-hoarding laws that technically make it illegal to keep large amounts of cash at home instead of in a bank. Alaska's no gambling winnings in banks rule. At one point, Alaskan banks were prohibited from accepting large gambling winnings as deposits to prevent money laundering. Wyoming once had a law that banks had to close on Sundays, even online. This outdated law meant banks couldn't process online transactions on Sundays. Obviously, it became unenforceable as digital banking grew. Federal law limits U to 6 savings account withdrawals. Per month regulation. D once made it illegal for people to make more than 6 transfers or withdrawals from their savings accounts in a single month. This rule was temporarily lifted during COVID-19. South Carolina once banned banks from advertising interest rates. A strange law once prevented banks in South Carolina from advertising how much interest they'd pay on savings accounts. It's illegal to own a bank in your own name in banks in Ohio. Can refuse to let you open an account if your clothes smell like marijuana. Even if marijuana is legal in your state, some Ohio banks can deny you service if they suspect your money comes from cannabis sales. It's illegal to deposit a check with an upside-down signature in some banks. Some banks consider an upside-down or backward signature as an attempt to commit fraud, even if it's an honest mistake. Nevada once required banks to have armed guards in every branch. For a time, all banks in Nevada had to employ armed security guards. This law was later relaxed due to concerns about accidental shootings. New Jersey once required banks to offer customers coffee. A bizarre old law required banks to provide coffee to customers. It was meant to encourage friendly banking, but it was repealed when it became an unnecessary expense. You can't insure yourself for too much money. In some states limit how much life insurance you can take out on yourself to prevent suspicious overinsurance that could lead to fraud. Weird money handling laws. It's illegal to glue 2 pennies together in certain states. Federal law prohibits damaging U.S. currency, but some states take it even further by making it illegal to glue pennies together for crafts. You can't pay taxes in all coins. While the U.S. Treasury says coins are legal tender, the IRS won't accept tax payments made entirely in pennies, or nickels. Banks in North Carolina can refuse torn dollar bills. Even though the Federal Reserve allows damaged bills to be exchanged, some North Carolina banks won't accept them unless more than 75% of the bill is intact. It's illegal to use cash in some car sales in Texas. Some dealerships in Texas refuse cash payments above a certain amount because of money laundering concerns. You can't pay bail with loose change in some states. Some jails won't let you post bail using only quarters, dimes, and nickels, even if it adds up to the correct amount. Ridiculous banking regulations. Banks in Washington must offer a waiting period for loan applications. Even if you need an emergency loan, Washington banks must wait a certain number of days before final approval. It's illegal to charge excessive interest in some states, but no one agrees on what that means. Some states have anti-usury laws, but the definition of excessive interest varies wildly, making enforcement tricky. Some states prohibit banks from closing more than 2 days in a row, even on holidays. Banks in states like Minnesota must stay open at least every other day. You can be denied a bank account for too many bounced checks, even years ago if you bounced multiple checks in the past. Some banks can blacklist you from ever opening an account again. You can't withdraw large sums of cash without an explanation. If you try to withdraw more than $10,000 from your account, the bank must file a report, and they may ask you why you need the money. The strangest law of all, it's illegal to secretly own a bank in some states, in places like Kentucky. If you own a bank, your name must be public knowledge. No secret banking moguls allowed. You can go to jail for writing a check on a closed account. Some states classify knowingly writing a check from a closed account as check fraud, which can lead to jail time. It's illegal to carry more than $1,000 in cash at airports in some states, without explaining why TSA and local law enforcement can seize large amounts of cash if they suspect illegal activity, even if you haven't committed a crime. Banks can legally spy on your transactions and report suspicious activity. Thanks to the Bank Secrecy Act, banks must monitor your account for unusual activity and report it to the government if they think it's suspicious. You can't take a selfie with your bank card. In some states, some banks prohibit customers from photographing their credit or debit cards, even if it's just for social media. In Mississippi, you can be denied a bank account for being untrustworthy. Mississippi banks have the legal right to deny anyone an account if they believe the person is untrustworthy, with no clear definition of what that means. In some states, banks can legally close your account without warning. Certain states allow banks to shut down your account without prior notice if they suspect fraud or suspicious activity. You can't deposit a check made out to a fake name, even if it's your nickname. If someone writes a check to Joe Cool instead of your legal name, many banks won't cash it. Some states limit how many bank accounts you can open. A few states have old laws restricting individuals from opening multiple accounts at different banks within a short time. It's illegal to get a mortgage on a house that's haunted in some states. Some states require sellers to disclose paranormal activity, and certain banks can refuse to lend money for a house with a haunted history. Bizarre banking and cash. Handling restrictions in Nevada. It's illegal to pay for a lottery ticket with a credit card. If you try to buy a lottery ticket using a credit card, you could be breaking state law. You can't use a post-dated check-in. Some states post-dating a check, writing a future date on it, is technically illegal in some places because it could be considered check fraud. Colorado banks can refuse large cash deposits without a reason, even if you have legitimate money. Colorado banks can refuse large cash deposits with no explanation. Alaska once required banks to weigh gold deposits. Before accepting them, back in the gold rush days, banks in Alaska had to physically weigh and verify gold before allowing deposits. New Jersey banks once required fingerprints for large withdrawals. At one point, some banks in New Jersey required fingerprints for cash withdrawals over a certain amount. Weird banking laws that sound fake, but aren't. In some states, it's illegal to use a fake beard in a bank. This law exists to prevent disguises during robberies, but it's strangely specific. It's illegal to send cash through the mail in certain situations. Mailing large amounts of cash is technically illegal under federal law because it could be linked to illegal activities. You can't pay for a bank safe deposit box with cash in some banks. Some banks require you to pay for a safe deposit box using a check or card, not cash. Some states require banks to close on Sundays, even for online banking. Certain state laws originally required banks to be fully closed on Sundays, even for digital transactions. It's illegal to try depositing a check for more than its face value. Some states have laws banning attempts to deposit altered or adjusted checks, even if the bank catches it. Extreme money laundering and fraud prevention. Rules banks can freeze your account if they suspect you're avoiding taxes. If a bank thinks you're structuring transactions to avoid IRS reporting limits, they can freeze your funds. If you deposit over $10,000, your bank must report it to the government. Large cash deposits trigger an automatic report to federal authorities under the Bank Secrecy Act. Some banks won't let you withdraw more than $500 without a written request. Certain banks limit large withdrawals unless you provide written documentation explaining why you need the cash. Paying off a loan too early can sometimes get you a penalty. Some loans have prepayment penalties, making it illegal to pay them off early without extra fees. It's illegal to open a bank account for a pet. Yes, people have tried. Some people have attempted to open bank accounts under their pet's name for tax evasion or inheritance reasons. Banks caught on and banned it. The strangest banking laws of all. Some states once required 2 people to approve large cash withdrawals. Old banking laws in some states required 2 bank employees to sign off on any withdrawal over a certain amount. It's illegal to sell a fake banknote, even as a joke. Selling counterfeit-looking money, even if clearly marked as fake, can violate federal law. Some states have laws against using money as a political statement, defacing money to protest a political cause, like stamping "Vote for" X on a dollar bill, can be considered illegal. There's a law against using U.S. currency in an offensive way. If you modify a bill in a way considered obscene or offensive, you could face penalties. It's illegal to use torn money in vending machines. In some states, some vending machines reject torn bills, but in a few states, businesses can legally refuse them as payment too. In Texas, you can be arrested for writing. A hot check over $100 bouncing a check over $100 in Texas isn't just a civil issue. It can be considered a criminal offense. Some states require banks to keep a lost and found for forgotten money. If you forget cash at a bank counter or ATM, some state laws require the bank to hold it for a set period before turning it over to the state. It's illegal to use a bank's coin counting machine for foreign coins. Many states prohibit depositing foreign coins in coin counting machines, even if they have the same metal composition as U.S. coins. In some states, banks must notify the police. If you try to withdraw too much cash, large cash withdrawals, even if legal, might trigger a report to local law enforcement, especially if the amount is unusual for your account history. It's illegal to destroy money in certain ways, but not others. Burning money is a federal crime, but shredding or folding it into origami is perfectly legal. In California, you can be charged extra for using a non-bank ATM too often. Some California banks charge additional fees if you use a competitor's ATM more than a set number of times per month. Banks can legally deny you a loan for having too many credit cards. Even if you've never missed a payment, some banks refuse loans if they think you have too much available credit. Why did the banker break up with his girlfriend? She just lost interest. Why did the teller go broke because he lost his balance? Why did the bank teller quit his job? He just couldn't handle the pressure of making sense. What's a bank teller's favorite exercise? Counting reps. Why did the banker carry a ladder? Because interest rates were climbing. What did the bank teller say to the customer? You can count on me. Why was the banker always calm? He had a lot of patience and accounts. What's a bank teller's favorite type of music? Heavy metal, because of all the coins. How do tellers like their coffee? With a little extra interest. What do you call a bank teller who gets promoted? A Lone Star. Why don't banks ever play hide and seek? Because good luck hiding all that cash. Why did the robber take a bath before robbing the bank? He wanted to make a clean getaway. Why did the thief bring a ladder to the bank? Because he wanted to make a high-stakes withdrawal. What do you call an ATM that takes money instead of giving it? A reverse robbery. Why did the security guard go broke? Because he spent all his time guarding money, not making it. What's a bank robber's favorite dessert? A heist cream sundae. Why did the robber refuse to steal from the bank? Because he lost interest. What do you call a robber who only steals pennies? A small-time crook. Why did the criminal become a banker? Because he wanted to make legal withdrawals. What's a bank's favorite kind of security? A loan shark. Why don't banks give loans to skeletons? They have no body to pay it back. Why do banks love vampires? They're always after high interest. What's a mortgage broker's favorite TV show? Breaking Loan. Why did the banker get fired? He gave out loans based on astrology. What do you call a broke person in debt? A non-profit organization. Why did the loan officer cross the road? To repossess the chicken. What do you call a loan with zero interest? A boring deal. Why do banks love farmers? Because they always grow interest. Why do some people hate loans? Because they come with a lot of baggage, debt. What's a pirate's favorite bank? The Lone Ranger. Why did the bank account break up with the savings account? It was just too much commitment. What's a banker's favorite type of joke? One with high interest. What's the best way to double your money? Fold it and put it back in your wallet. Why did the banker get promoted? Because he had a lot of interest in his job. Why did the penny refuse to hang out with the nickel? It didn't want to change. Why did the dollar bill break up with the piggy bank? It needed more space to grow. Why was the banker happy? He finally had enough interest to retire. Why was the ATM so cold? Because it was in a freezing account. Why did the bank close early? Because they lost interest. What's a rich banker's favorite hobby? Collecting interest. A customer walked into a bank and asked for a loan. The banker said, "Sure, can I have your social security number?" The customer said, "Why? Are we sharing identities now?" Why? Do banks always serve lollipops? To sweeten the deal. What do you say when a banker sneezes? "Bless you, and may your savings grow." What do you call a banker who moonlights as a magician? A lone illusionist. What's a bank's favorite game? Monopoly, because they always win. Why did the ATM go to therapy? It had too many withdrawals. What's the worst thing you can hear at an ATM? Insufficient funds. Why did the ATM get locked out of its account? It forgot its PIN. What did the ATM say to the customer? "You complete me, insert card." Why do ATMs love music? Because they make a lot of deposits and beats. I told my bank I lost my credit card. They told me not to worry. The thief spends less than I do. I wanted to be a banker, but I lost interest. A man walks into a bank to open an account. The teller says, "Congratulations, you now owe us money." My bank loves me. I'm their top debtor. I checked my account balance today. It was negative, but at least it wasn't emotional. I'm starting a bank for comedians. We'll call it Pun Trust. My savings account is like my diet. Empty. A bank robbery happened near me. I guess you could say it was a high interest crime. If money talks, mine must be on mute. My banker friend got fired. Turns out, he had too much checkered history. Why did the banker refuse to lend money to the ghost? Because he had no collateral. What do you call a mortgage you can't afford? A house arrest. I tried to take out a loan for a boat, but my bank said my credit was sinking. Why do banks love new homeowners? Because they're always in debt to them. Why did the credit card go to therapy? Because it was maxed out. What did the credit card say after a long day of shopping? "I need a break. I'm completely spent." Why did the man bring a ladder to the bank? He wanted to raise his credit limit. My credit card company called me. They asked if I made a purchase of $5,000. I said, "I wish." What's a credit card's favorite sport? Charge and field. Why did my credit card go on vacation? It needed a balance transfer. My credit card is like a magician. Money appears, then disappears instantly. What did the credit card say to the ATM? "Don't judge me." I checked my credit score today. It just said, LOL. My credit card has a great sense of humor. It always laughs at my bank balance. Why did the ATM break up with the cash? It just wasn't dispensing happiness anymore. My ATM keeps calling me, but I don't have the funds to answer. Why did the ATM get promoted? Because it always made great transactions. I told my friend an ATM joke, but it was only funny when withdrawn. What did the ATM say to the debit card? I feel like we have a real connection. The ATM gave me too much money. I guess it's finally paying me back for all those fees. What's the ATM's favorite TV show? Cash Cab. Why do ATMs make great stand-up comedians? They always deliver a good punchline. I tried to flirt with the ATM, but it told me to insert my card first. What's an ATM's favorite social media? App, Venmo. I tried to open a joint account with my dog. The bank said it had too many paws in the contract. Why did the dollar bill go to school? To learn how to make more sense. What's a banker's favorite snack? Cashew nuts. Why do banks always have glass windows, so you can see right through their policies? What did the piggy bank say after a big meal? I'm stuffed. My bank keeps offering me credit cards. It's like they want me to be in debt. I asked my bank for a loan to open a bakery. They said, "You need better credit." Why don't rich people play hide and seek? Because good luck hiding all that money. The bank rejected my loan request. They said my sense of humor was too poor. Why did the banker make a great musician? Because he always had the right notes. I told my bank I lost my credit card. They said, "Don't worry, someone's already using it." Why did the bank robber take a bath before the heist? He wanted to make a clean getaway. I asked my banker for investment advice. He said, "Buy low, sell high, and don't call me when you're broke." Why did the banker go to art school? Because he wanted to draw interest. My bank said my account was overdrawn. I told them to check again. I'm underwhelmed. Why did the banker bring a ladder to work? Because he wanted to climb the interest rates. I tried to make a deposit at the bank, but they told me laughter isn't considered currency. Why don't banks offer free coffee? Because customers might leave with more than just interest. My bank balance is like a balloon. One small mistake, and it's completely deflated. Why did the ATM go to therapy? Because it felt used and empty inside. My bank account and I are in a toxic relationship. Every time I put money in, it disappears. What do you call a bank that doesn't trust its customers? A suspicious institution. Why did the banker go to the beach? Because he wanted to surf the interest rates. What's a bank's favorite board? Game, Monopoly, because they always win. I checked my balance today. Turns out I have just enough for a pack of gum. Why do banks love secrets? Because they always keep things in vaults. My bank account is like my phone battery. Always running. Low. I asked my bank for a small loan. They handed me a magnifying glass. Why did the banker switch careers? He lost interest. What's a banker's favorite exercise? Crunching numbers. Why did the banker become a gardener? Because he wanted to grow his assets. My bank loves me so much. They send me love letters every month, though they call them statements. Why did the banker bring a suitcase to work? Because he was always carrying interest. What's a banker's favorite music genre? Rock and loan. I told my bank I was going to pay off my loan in full. They laughed and said, "Good. 1. Why was the dollar bill always stressed? Because it was constantly being spent. Why don't bankers trust staircases? Because they're always up to something. I robbed my piggy bank today. Turns out it was only worth a few cents. Why did the ATM get in trouble? Because it made too many withdrawals. My bank account and my diet have a lot in common. They both always seem to be empty. Why did the check refuse to be cashed? Because it felt bounced around too much. What's a banker's favorite vacation spot? The Cayman Islands. I asked my bank for financial advice. They said, "Stop calling us." Why? Did the bank manager go broke? Because he lost interest in his job. History and origins of banking. The world's first bank was the Medici Bank in Italy, founded in 1397. Ancient Mesopotamians were the first to use banking-like transactions around 2000 BC. The first paper money was issued in China during the Tang Dynasty, 7th century. The oldest bank still in operation is Banca Monte dei Paschi di Siena, founded in 1472 in Italy. The Rothschild family once controlled a significant portion of Europe's banking sector in the 19th century. The Knights Templar were among the earliest international bankers providing loans and secure deposits. The first credit card was issued in 1950 by Diners Club. Central banking, as we know it, started with the Bank of England in 1694. The term bankrupt comes from the Italian words bancarotta, meaning broken bench. Merchants would break their trading benches when they couldn't pay debts. The first ATM was installed in London in 1967 by Barclays. Modern banking and financial secrets. Banks create money out of thin air through a process called fractional reserve banking. Only about 10% of money actually exists as cash. The rest is digital. Some of the wealthiest families in the world use private banks that regular people can't access. Swiss banks were historically known for their secrecy, but laws have changed to reduce tax evasion. Billionaires rarely keep large sums of money in banks. They invest in assets like real estate, stocks, and businesses. Some banks own patents on AI systems that predict customer spending habits. The U.S. Federal Reserve is not actually owned by the government. It operates independently. Some large banks are too big to fail, meaning the government may bail them out in financial crises. There's an underground banking system called Hawala, used in many countries for discrete transactions. The largest bank robbery in history was the Iraqi central bank heist in 2003, where $1 billion was stolen. Hidden fees and banking tricks. Many banks make more money from fees than from lending. ATMs often charge higher withdrawal fees for customers using different banks. Overdraft fees are a major revenue source, costing Americans billions annually. Some banks charge a fee for not using your account. Credit card companies make billions by encouraging minimum payments, keeping people in debt longer. Banks sometimes use AI to predict when you'll overdraft, and time fee withdrawals accordingly. High-frequency trading lets banks and hedge funds profit from tiny market fluctuations. Your mortgage may be sold to another bank without your knowledge. Banks often delay deposits to push customers into overdrafts. Checking accounts often have hidden fees disguised as maintenance or service charges. Global banking and economic control. The IMF, International Monetary Fund, influences economies by lending money to countries with strict conditions. Some banks helped fund wars, including both sides of World War II. There's more debt in the world than actual money. Some banks lobby governments to influence financial laws in their favor. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency, making it incredibly powerful. The World Bank was created to help nations rebuild after World War II. Some countries manipulate their currencies to gain an economic advantage. Gold reserves no longer fully back most currencies, despite popular belief. In some countries, banks control access to withdrawing large amounts of cash. The biggest financial crash in history happened in 1929, leading to the Great Depression. Banking security and cyber threats. Banks use artificial intelligence to detect fraud. Some bank vaults are designed to flood in case of a break-in. The deep web is used for illegal banking transactions. Online banking fraud has increased with the rise of digital transactions. Bank robbers now prefer hacking over physical theft. Your transactions are tracked to detect suspicious activity. Some banks sell your financial data to marketing companies. There's a black market for stolen banking info on the dark web. Bitcoin was created in response to the banking system's failures. Some high-tech ATMs use facial recognition to verify identity. Banking and customer manipulation. Many credit cards offer rewards to encourage spending beyond your means. Banks use psychology to design websites that make loans and credit seem more appealing. Most people don't read the fine print on their banking agreements. Banks make it difficult to cancel services to keep you as a customer. The biggest investors influence banking policies worldwide. Some bank ads are designed to make you feel guilty about not saving enough. Credit scores were originally meant only for banks, but now they affect jobs and housing. Banks use colors strategically in logos. Blue, non trust. Green, non's wealth. Some credit unions offer better rates than banks but aren't widely advertised. Banks pre-approve loans to get you to borrow, even if you don't need it. Hidden ways. Banks profit. Some banks invest in arms manufacturing without public knowledge. Your savings earn less interest than inflation, meaning your money loses value over time. Banks make billions from late payment fees on credit cards. High-interest payday loans are often backed by large banks. Banks lend out more money than they actually have. The Federal Reserve prints money based on demand, not gold reserves. The banking system runs on debt. If everyone paid off their loans, it would collapse. Banks make huge profits from student loans. Some banks invest in prisons, casinos, and controversial industries. Your bank account isn't fully protected if the bank fails, only up to the insured limit. The future of banking. Some banks plan to eliminate cash completely in the future. AI may replace human tellers entirely in the next 20 years. Some banks already test cryptocurrency adoption behind closed doors. There are banks with no physical branches, only digital operations. Biometric banking, fingerprints, eye scans, is becoming the new security standard. Future banking may include voice-activated transactions. Banks are experimenting with blockchain, but keeping it secret. Smart contracts may replace traditional bank loans. Quantum computing could break traditional encryption, posing a risk to banks. Some banks test microchip implants for payments. The first coins used as money date back to 600 BC in ancient Lydia, modern Turkey. Egyptians used grain banks as one of the earliest forms of banking. The first bank in the United States was the Bank of North America, founded in 1781. The first Bank of the United States was established by Alexander Hamilton in 1791. The U.S. Federal Reserve System was created in 1913 to prevent financial crises, but it has caused many since. The term loan shark originated from predatory lenders in the 1920s. The word credit comes from the Latin word credere, meaning to believe. Bartering was once more common than banking, even in medieval times. The first European central bank was the Riksbank of Sweden, founded in 1668. The gold standard, which tied currency to gold, was abandoned in 1971 by the U.S. The secret side of banking. Banks make money when interest rates rise, so they lobby for policies that increase rates. Many modern banks own stakes in big tech companies like Google, Apple, and Amazon. Some countries have negative interest rates, meaning banks charge you to hold your money. Banks secretly hold debt portfolios that could trigger financial crises. AI-powered trading algorithms control over 80% of stock market transactions. Some high-level banking decisions are made in invite-only meetings that aren't disclosed to the public. The U.S. government once froze all bank withdrawals during the Great Depression in 1933. Banks track your shopping habits to predict when you might apply for a loan. Some banks have been caught manipulating currency exchange rates to increase profits. The majority of money worldwide is debt-based, meaning it only exists because people borrow it. Hidden banking tricks and loopholes. Credit scores were invented in 1956 but weren't widely used until the 1980s. Banks sometimes lower your credit limit just before you make a big purchase to push you into debt. The grace period on credit cards is designed to make you overspend. Some banks manipulate mortgage rates to maximize their earnings. ATM machines were once connected to landline telephones before the internet. Some banks slow down your direct deposits to earn interest on your money before releasing it. The fine print on loan agreements is written in legal language designed to confuse borrowers. Banks push auto loans because they make more money on interest than selling the car itself. Some banks charge inactivity fees on accounts that haven't been used in a while. Some credit card rewards are devalued over time to make them less useful. Banking, economy, and global influence. The U.S. dollar is the world's reserve currency, giving the U.S. a major financial advantage. Some countries peg their currencies to the U.S. dollar to stabilize their economies. There's an unofficial global banking cartel that influences financial markets. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has been accused of trapping countries in perpetual debt. Central banks sometimes manipulate inflation data to avoid panic. Some banks hold gold reserves in secret vaults that the public never sees. The largest gold reserve in the world is at Fort Knox, but some claim it's been secretly removed. The global financial crisis of 2008 was largely caused by reckless lending by big banks. Some of the biggest banks were bailed out using taxpayer money after the 2008 crash. The BIS, Bank for International Settlements in Switzerland, is called the Bank of Central Banks. Banking and economic manipulation. Recessions are sometimes engineered by central banks to reset economic cycles. Some banks intentionally delay releasing economic reports to manipulate stock prices. Billionaire investors often influence banking policies behind closed doors. Banks sometimes loan money to each other in secret to cover up financial weaknesses. Some hedge funds pay banks for insider trading tips, despite strict laws. The Federal Reserve's interest rate policies affect home prices, inflation, and the job market. Money laundering through banks is a bigger issue than most people realize. Certain credit unions offer better rates than banks, but are less advertised. The U.S. government once confiscated gold from citizens during the Great Depression. Some wealthy people store assets in offshore banks to avoid taxes, hidden costs, and banking fees. Banks secretly adjust interest rates based on risk, location, and credit score. Some banks charge fees for receiving money via wire transfer. Your debit card can be frozen if banks detect unusual activity, even if it's legit. Banks often reorder transactions to cause overdraft fees. Credit card interest rates are deliberately high to trap users in debt. Business loans have hidden fees that aren't disclosed up front. Some bank statements are designed to be confusing to hide fees. Mortgage prepayment penalties make it harder for homeowners to pay off loans early. Some banks charge you for depositing large sums of cash. Many zero-fee accounts still make money from hidden costs. The future of banking. Cash may disappear completely within the next 50 years. AI banking assistants will replace human tellers. Some governments are experimenting with digital-only central bank currencies. Cryptocurrency is challenging traditional banking, but is still unregulated in many places. Banks are testing retina scans and voice recognition for security. Smart contracts on blockchain could replace loans in the future. Some banks have secret plans to buy digital assets before they go mainstream. Quantum computing could make traditional encryption obsolete. Some countries are testing UBI, Universal Basic Income, using digital banking systems. AI may control stock trading entirely within the next decade. The word bank comes from the Italian word banco, meaning bench, since early bankers conducted business from benches in markets. The oldest bank still operating is Banca Monte dei Paschi di Siena, founded in 1472 in Italy. Ancient Rome had deposit banks, where people stored money for safekeeping. Julius Caesar passed a law allowing creditors to seize land from debtors. In medieval times, moneylenders were often monks, as churches controlled wealth. Knights Templar ran one of the first international banking systems in the 12th century. Paper money was first used in China during the Tang dynasty around 618 AD. The Medici family of Florence created the first modern holding companies in the 1400s. Some early banks issued their own private currencies before national banks took over. Coins were originally valued by weight, leading to counterfeiters shaving metal from the edges. Banks create money from nothing. Every time they issue a loan, they generate new money. Most money exists digitally. Only about 8% of the world's money is physical cash. Central banks are independent from governments, giving them immense power over economies. Banks decide which businesses succeed by controlling access to credit. The biggest banks secretly coordinate policies that influence global markets. Big banks own shares in each other, making competition less real than it seems. Some of the largest bank bailouts were to prevent major institutions from collapsing. Banks lobby governments heavily, influencing financial regulations to their advantage. The U.S. Federal Reserve is not truly a government agency, but operates independently. Governments often borrow money from central banks, paying interest on money they create. Some banks charge hidden fees for using ATMs abroad without clear warnings. Checking account interest rates are kept intentionally low to maximize bank profits. Many credit cards track your spending to sell data to advertisers. Interest-free financing often has hidden fees or penalties that make it more expensive. Banks may limit withdrawals during financial crises to prevent bank runs. Some accounts automatically switch to high-fee structures after a certain period. Paying only the minimum on a credit card can extend repayment for decades. Most banks don't physically store all the cash they claim to hold. Mortgage rates fluctuate daily, sometimes even hourly, based on financial trends. Banks slowly phase out older account types to push customers into higher fee options. The World Bank and IMF influence financial policies in developing countries. Swiss banks were once the most secretive, but new laws have forced them to reveal more data. Some nations use banks as tools for espionage, tracking global transactions. Digital only. Banks are growing rapidly, challenging traditional institutions. In some countries, banks can freeze accounts without court orders. A handful of banks control most of the world's money through mergers and acquisitions. Offshore banking exists because different countries have different financial laws. Some countries peg their currency to gold or the US dollar for stability. The global financial crisis of 2008 started with bad mortgage loans sold as safe investments. China's banking system is the largest in the world by total assets. ATMs are prime targets for cybercriminals, with card-skimming devices being common. Some ATMs run outdated software like Windows XP, making them easy to hack. Many online banking passwords can be cracked in seconds without two-factor authentication. Cybercriminals often target small banks, as they have weaker security. Digital payment apps like Venmo and Cash App often have fewer security protections than banks. Some countries still use paper passbooks instead of digital records. Banks track your location when using mobile banking apps. Money mules are people who unknowingly help criminals launder money through their bank accounts. Most banks won't refund money lost to fraud if you voluntarily give out your details. Banking data breaches are more common than the public realizes. The Great Depression started with banking failures in 1929. Economic crashes often benefit big banks, as they buy assets at low prices. Banks sometimes delay bad news to avoid causing a market panic. High inflation benefits banks because it makes existing debts cheaper over time. The Federal Reserve can manipulate inflation by adjusting interest rates. Some banks use stress tests to check if they can survive a crisis, but they often manipulate results. Most modern recessions have been triggered by financial sector failures. Housing bubbles happen when banks lend too much, leading to price crashes. Stock buybacks were illegal before the 1980s, but are now common, benefiting banks. Banks use AI to predict economic trends and make decisions before the public knows. The first modern credit card was issued in 1950 by Diners Club. Banks profit most from late fees, not just interest on loans. Credit cards charge different rates depending on your creditworthiness. The minimum payment trap is designed to keep customers in debt longer. Many payday lenders are owned by large banks, despite predatory interest rates. Some loan applications are flagged based on zip codes, impacting certain communities unfairly. Your credit score can drop if you apply for too many loans at once. Most credit scores are controlled by just 3 companies: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Banks secretly track loan defaulters and share lists among themselves. Auto loan debt is rising faster than mortgage debt, leading to concerns about a bubble. Cryptocurrency could replace banks if adoption grows fast. Enough. Central banks are experimenting with digital currencies that could replace cash. Smart contracts on blockchain could eliminate the need for middlemen in banking. AI-powered customer service is replacing human bankers. Biometric authentication like fingerprints is becoming the new standard for security. Voice recognition banking is already being tested by some financial institutions. Some governments plan to tax digital wallets to control digital finance growth. Quantum computing could break encryption, forcing banks to upgrade security. Big tech. Companies like Apple, Google, and Amazon are entering banking. Banks will likely phase out physical branches in the next 20-30 years. Banks used to print their own money in the U.S. before the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. The largest bank robbery in history was the 2003 Central Bank of Iraq heist, where Saddam Hussein's regime stole $1 billion. The first known bank collapse happened in ancient Greece around 373 BC. In the 1800s, people often kept money under their mattresses due to distrust in banks. The Great Depression saw 9,000 U.S. banks fail, wiping out savings accounts. The term bankruptcy comes from the Italian bancarotta, meaning broken bench. Gold was once illegal for U.S. citizens to own, from 1933 to 1974. The Federal Reserve was created in secrecy in 1910 on Jekyll Island, Georgia. Bank runs are when too many people try to withdraw money at once, causing a collapse. The Rothschild banking dynasty was once the wealthiest family in the world. Banks use secretive offshore accounts to avoid taxes. The biggest banks influence global politics more than most governments. Bank CEOs often earn more than $20 million per year, even during crises. Your mortgage is likely owned by investors, not your bank. Banks use predictive analytics to judge if customers will default on loans. Some banks still charge for paper statements to push digital banking. Bank mergers make competition an illusion, with fewer companies controlling finance. Banks can freeze your account without warning if they suspect suspicious activity. The Federal Reserve is owned by private banks, not the U.S. government. Most credit card fraud comes from inside banks, not external hackers. Personal banking secrets. Banks intentionally keep their fees confusing to make more money. Some accounts quietly switch to high-fee structures after a few years. Many banks don't count weekends when processing deposits or withdrawals. ATMs dispense slightly worn bills so banks don't have to order fresh cash as often. Banks track spending habits and sell data to advertisers. If you deposit large amounts of cash, the bank may report you to authorities. Many people pay overdraft fees unknowingly because banks process withdrawals first. Opening multiple accounts at different banks can increase your credit score. Student loans cannot be discharged in bankruptcy, unlike most other debts. Credit card companies make more from late fees than from interest rates. Switzerland once protected Nazi bank accounts under its secrecy laws. The Cayman Islands has more registered banks than citizens. The Vatican has its own bank, which has been involved in several scandals. India's first bank was started in 1770 but collapsed due to mismanagement. China has the world's largest banking sector, surpassing the U.S. Some countries still have 0% interest rates to stimulate economic growth. In Japan, banks charge negative interest rates, meaning people lose money keeping it there. Some Middle Eastern banks follow Sharia law, which bans charging interest. Most international transactions are processed through SWIFT, a Belgium-based system. The World Bank sometimes forces countries to adopt policies that benefit corporations. Most money laundering happens through major banks, not underground criminals. Banks often don't tell customers when their data is hacked to avoid panic. Bank employees sometimes steal customer data and sell it on the dark web. Online banking fraud is rising, with billions lost yearly. Banks test ATM security by hiring hackers to break into them. Many bank vaults have emergency escape routes, in case employees get locked inside. Banks use fake money in their ATMs overnight to prevent robberies. If you lose money due to fraud, banks may not reimburse you unless you prove you were scammed. Some bank ATMs randomly require fingerprint scans in high-crime areas. Your bank probably knows where you are whenever you use mobile banking apps. Most physical money doesn't exist. Over 90% of the world's currency is digital. Banks don't actually store your cash in your account. They use it for loans and investments. A single $1 bill can last up to 6 years before needing replacement. The U.S. once issued $100,000 bills, but only for internal government transactions. There's over $1.5 trillion in U.S. bills in circulation, but most is held overseas. Banks often destroy old money, shredding thousands of bills daily. The ink used in U.S. bills costs over $100 million per year to produce. The world's most counterfeited currency is the U.S. 100 bill. Some countries like Sweden are almost fully cashless. Most payments are digital. In some U.S. states, refusing to accept cash is illegal. Businesses must allow cash transactions. Banks purposely delay check deposits to make extra interest from holding funds. Most bank fees are profit-driven, not actual operational costs. Big banks often make more from fees than from loans. Many banks invest in industries like fossil fuels, despite public environmental commitments. Banks manipulate interest rates, like LIBOR, to boost profits. Loan agreements often contain hidden clauses that can cost borrowers more. Banks can and do change your loan terms, sometimes without notice. Banking, free accounts, often come with hidden costs after the first year. Many banks fund political campaigns, influencing laws and regulations. Banks legally track and report suspicious transactions to the government. Credit card interest rates can change overnight without much warning. If you miss one payment, your interest rate can double or triple. Many credit cards have universal default clauses. One late payment can raise all your rates. Paying just the minimum payment on a credit card can trap you in debt for decades. Banks make billions from late fees, charging as much as $40 per missed payment. Many credit card perks, like travel insurance, go unused because people don't read the fine print. Your credit score can be affected by banks lowering your credit limit, even if you did nothing wrong. Some banks intentionally deny small business loan. Banks create money out of thin air when they issue loans. The U.S. dollar has lost over 90% of its value since the early 1900s due to inflation. 2 bills are still in circulation, but many people think they're rare. There's a secret missing $1 trillion in unaccounted cash worldwide. The U.S. Bureau of Engraving and Printing destroys millions of dollars daily. Bank vaults aren't as full as movies make them seem. Most cash is digital. Old U.S. banknotes can still be used, even if they were printed 100 years ago. Some countries use plastic money instead of paper for durability. North Korea is one of the biggest counterfeiters of U.S. dollars. The term bankrupt comes from Italian bancarotta, meaning broken bench. Many banks profit more from fees than lending. Banks sometimes delay transactions on purpose to maximize overdraft fees. Some banks manipulate ATM withdrawals to trigger multiple overdrafts. Your account may have a suspicious activity flag without you knowing. Banks secretly rank customers based on profitability. Many low-interest credit cards have hidden fees that make them expensive. Some banks charge a fee just to close your account. A bounce check can cost you $35 or more, even if it's not your fault. Your mortgage may be sold multiple times without your knowledge. Banks often push customers toward high-fee investments. Credit cards make more money from interest than annual fees. Rewards programs encourage overspending, increasing bank profits. Late payment fees are structured to keep customers in debt. Interest rates can jump if you're late on any payment, even a utility bill. Most credit card users never use all their benefits. Student loans are almost impossible to discharge in bankruptcy. Car dealerships earn commission by inflating interest rates on loans. Banks often deny small loans but easily approve high-interest credit cards. Even 0% interest loans often have hidden costs. Many credit card companies sell your data to third parties. Banks helped cause the Great Depression by tightening credit. Most big banks were bailed out in 2008 but still laid off employees. The Federal Reserve is not a government entity, but a private bank. Inflation allows banks to collect more in interest over time. The real cost of living has risen faster than wages due to banking policies. Interest rates are manipulated to control economic booms and recessions. The stock market is heavily influenced by major banks' trading activities. Banks helped create the student loan crisis by lobbying for tougher bankruptcy laws. During crises, banks often receive relief before individuals. Many banks own large amounts of real estate, influencing property values. The world's richest people use offshore accounts to hide wealth. The Vatican Bank has been involved in multiple corruption scandals. Drug cartels have laundered billions through major banks. Some foreign banks operate outside of U.S. jurisdiction. Some countries have negative interest rates, where you pay to keep money in the bank. China's digital yuan could let the government track all transactions. Russia's banks have been sanctioned multiple times but still operate globally. A single Swiss bank once held over $500 million for Nazi Germany. Many dictators hide money in Western banks while their countries suffer. Countries sometimes seize foreign bank accounts in times of war. Most savings accounts lose value over time due to inflation. Banks encourage customers to keep low balances to charge fees. Your credit score can be lowered by the bank reducing your credit limit. Some banks will charge fees for depositing too much cash. Free checking often comes with hidden costs after a year. The average American spends over $290 per year in banking fees. Many people qualify for better interest rates but never ask. Banks don't automatically apply the best interest rate. You have to request it. Your bank may offer special deals, but only if you ask. Banks often try to upsell unnecessary financial products. Online banks often offer better rates than physical banks. Bank websites and apps track your spending habits. Many banks sell customer data to advertisers. Mobile banking fraud is on the rise. Some banks use AI to predict if you'll default on a loan. Cybercriminals often target bank employees instead of customers. Most bank fraud cases involve an insider. Banks can freeze accounts for suspicious transactions, even if they're legitimate. Bitcoin and crypto threaten traditional banking, so banks try to regulate them. Many banks have hidden backdoors for government surveillance. Wells Fargo created millions of fake accounts to hit sales targets. The 2008 crisis was caused by banks selling bad mortgages. Some banks have been caught forging customer signatures. Goldman Sachs was fined billions for corrupt practices. Man.